Okay, people, so I've been digging deeper into these Epstein files, and there is a very dark and suspicious story surrounding one of his properties that's known as the Zorro Ranch. Now, I've got a whole bunch of things in a document here about this Zorro Ranch, and it is pretty twisted. They're talking about there might actually be numerous people that were murdered near this ranch, and there's even rumors that you might have had bodies buried at it. Okay, so look. Take a look at this. This is in the Epstein subreddit, okay? r/Epstein. It's been absolutely booming the last few days, as you can imagine. Okay, you know I'm a Reddit demon, and I've been absolutely dipping deep into the r/Epstein subreddit, okay? This is going around. It says, Epstein and Maxwell buried 2 girls strangled to death near the Zorro Ranch. And so this is basically a link to a document that's in these files. And this is crazy, okay? This is crazy. This is a report. It says, confidential, Jeffrey Epstein. Said, Edward, this is sensitive, so it will be the first and last email depending on your discretion. You can choose to take it or trash it, but this comes from a person that's been there and seen it all, as former staff at the Zorro. The material below was taken from Jeffrey Epstein's home as my insurance in case of future litigation against Epstein. Sorry, no questions. What's damning about Jeffrey Epstein is yet to be written. Did you know that somewhere in the hills outside of the Zorro, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madame Ghislaine? Both died by strangulation during rough fetish S. Here are the video footage of Jeffrey Epstein, and this says, I don't even want to say it, S word with minor, menage a trois, underage G, you know, I've got to be careful what I say on here. Underage G, Matthew Mellon video. R-word fantasy video, underage G, girl from Bay Area, temp, confession to Madame Ghislaine. Please arrange for 1 Bitcoin by 6 p.m. today to the Bitcoin wallet address here. The USB will be sent anonymously to your attention by overnight courier upon receipt of the funds. You have my assurance this is exclusive, never before shared. No attorneys, no samples, no questions. Please confirm ASAP. Subject to protective order. Paragraphs 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, and 17. You know what's crazy about this? Okay, the price of Bitcoin has just crashed. We could have got this for the low. Back then, 2019, Bitcoin was probably even lower than it was now. This is crazy. We don't have any more information about what these posts or what these images are. Let's see what people are saying on Reddit. People are saying, okay, why are the cops there still in their station? Okay. It says the state needs to interview the former staff at the Zorro. It's crazy nothing's been investigated there. Yes, indeed. The underground tunnels that are mentioned in the files are at Zorro. There's eyewitness accounts that there was a connection between the Zorro Ranch, Tom Ford's ranch. However, he sold his property in 2020, coincidentally, and another ranch owned by the Victoria's Secret owner. There were back roads connecting the 3. Perhaps a New Mexican here can clarify. This place needs to be investigated. It says, and an emotional support puppy. I'm surprised she hasn't strangled that poor creature. I don't. Where was that? I didn't see that part. That's crazy. Seems like the local cops in New Mexico should take a look. Someone needs to take a look at the ground penetrating radar out to this ranch and also to the back 9 of Mar-a-Lago. We'll talk about that another time. Okay, it's crazy. All right, it's absolutely crazy. So I'm going to give you some backstory about this ranch. Okay, apparently in 1993. That's when Jeffrey Epstein purchased this 7,000-acre Zorro Ranch, and it would later become the site of numerous reported crimes. Here's some backstory.
There are allegations by these women that a lot of activity took place not only at Epstein's private island in the Caribbean, but also at the New Mexico ranch.
And he would have some of the women give massages to some of his guests. In the documents, one woman said she stayed here as a sex slave starting at age 15. At another point, Jeffrey said nude photos were taken of her, and she met a president of a foreign country here in New Mexico. His name was still sealed, and one woman alleged she was forced to have sex with prominent people.
New Mexico plays a prominent role in the Epstein story because of the relationship with former Governor Richardson, 2, with the fact that Epstein had this large, opulent ranch in southern Santa Fe County that apparently he visited a lot of times with a lot of the people named in these documents.
One of the people who were reported to have stayed here was world-renowned attorney and Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. He has denied in court filings of ever having any sexual relations with underage girls. Many others are named in the documents, also denying the accusations. They include former Governor Bill Richardson, former President Bill Clinton, and Prince Andrew. While some are accused of getting massages, there's no direct accusations of criminal activity with underage girls.
It's definitely a list that these people wish they weren't on.
The documents detail how some people were flown into the ranch on a small plane using this landing strip. KOAT legal expert John Day says more details are likely to come out in the years to come. There are 8 other civil suits that have been filed by alleged victims.
So, look, the ranch is beautiful, right? I mean, this looks like a target sign. They need to drop a bomb on this bitch. They need to drop a big WMD right on this and just blow this shit up. Factory reset, okay? But there are definitely some skeletons in the closet at this ranch. Now, this is crazy. The comments have been turned off suspiciously. But interestingly enough, okay, reports from multiple sources actually revealed long-held plans for Epstein to basically establish a baby farm at the ranch. And we've discussed in previous videos, he had this twisted plan that he wanted to impregnate 20 women at a time and start a whole new wave of little PDFs just like himself. So this is a throwback article about how Jeffrey Epstein had hoped to seed the human race with his DNA. Okay, what a creep. He apparently he had an unusual dream. He had hoped to seed the human race with his DNA by impregnating numerous women at his vast New Mexico ranch. Okay, he confided to scientists and others about his scheme, and according to 4 people familiar to his thinking, there's no evidence that it ever came to fruition, but he had a vision reflected in his long-standing fascination with what became known as transhumanism, the science of improving the human population through technologies like genetic engineering and artificial intelligence. He was charged with the trafficking, all right? He lied about the identities of his client, his wealth, his finances, all of this stuff. But basically, he used tactics to insinuate himself into an elite scientific community. All right, there's pictures. This is an archive, so we're not actually seeing the picture of the ranch. But basically, it talks about how he had scientists gathered at his Manhattan mansion, drinking Dom Perignon, all right, buffet lunches at Harvard's program for evolutionary dynamics, flew people all over the world, all right, link-ups with scientists on his private island, okay. He had a bunch of weird things going on. But what's crazy, okay, is basically it says here, there were multiple occasions starting in the 2000s he told scientists and businessmen about his ambitions to use his New Mexico ranch as a base where women would be inseminated with his sperm and would give birth to his babies. Thank God that never happened, because you know what he would have been on if that was the case. You can't give this guy access to no babies. According to 2 award-winning scientists and an advisor to large companies and wealthy individuals, all of whom Mr. Epstein told about it. It was not a secret, the advisor, for example, said he was told about the plans not only by Mr. Epstein at a gathering at his Manhattan townhouse, but also by at least one prominent member of the business community. One of the scientists said Mr. Epstein divulged his idea all the way back in 2001 at a dinner at the same townhouse. The others recalled Mr. Epstein discussing it with him at a 2006 conference that he hosted in St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. The idea struck all 3 as far-fetched and disturbing, and there's no indication that it would have been against the law. Okay? Apparently, he told people at a mansion party that he had at his crib that he talked to a scientist who told him his goal was to have 20 women at a time impregnated at the Zorro Ranch outside Santa Fe. And the scientist was working at NASA. Apparently, they didn't remember the name of the person that he was talking to. Basically, he had this idea for a baby ranch based on accounts of the repository for germinal choice, which was to be stocked with the sperm of Nobel laureates who wanted to strengthen the human gene pool. Okay. Crazy. So the creator of virtual reality and author basically said he had the impression that Epstein was using the dinner parties where some guests were attractive women with impressive academic credentials to screen candidates to bear his children. He didn't hide his interest in tinkering with genes and perpetuating his own DNA. It's just twisted, all right? It's actually twisted. He was looking to have these hot scientist women that he was going to try and groom and inseminate at his ranch. This guy is just disgusting, okay? It is actually disgusting. The fact this was going on is just horrendous, okay? And everybody denied knowing him. They didn't want to talk about him. They didn't want to have anything to do with him. There was a lot, okay? There was a lot going on. But that's what he was apparently getting up to in the New Mexico townhouse. Now, unfortunately, as time's gone on, okay, we're beginning to hear more and more details about what he was planning at this ranch. It was despicable. Now, one person mentioned recently in the released emails is a woman named Sabrina Bittencourt, who had apparently exposed a Brazilian slave farm. Okay, this is crazy. Look at this. Woman behind the arrest of faith healer John of God after claiming he was running a slave farm commits the Jeffrey at her home in Barcelona. Sabrina Bittencourt died after accusing her faith healer John of God of abuse. She claimed he kept women captive and exported their children onto the black market. The faith healer has been accused of abusing hundreds of women in Brazil. It says a woman who helped bring down a Brazilian faith healer accused of abuse has taken her own life in Spain. Sabrina Bittencourt died at her home in Barcelona just days after accusing John of God, real name João Teixeira de Faria, of running a slave farm. She claimed younger girls were held captive in a farming operation which exported babies on the black market. The women would be murdered after 10 years of having babies in the alleged scheme run by the 77-year-old celebrity faith healer who was arrested last year after hundreds of women accused him of abuse. Oh, what? And she just checked out days after exposing this? Give me a break. That's a picture of the guy. Epstein wishes that he was this dude, basically. This guy, and I'm not glorifying or glamorizing what was going on with these guys. It's absolutely despicable. But like, Epstein was a small fish compared to this guy, quite frankly. Miss Bittencourt left Brazil and was forced to live under protection after receiving death threats. Her eldest son, Gabriel Bam, confirmed her death, writing on Facebook, "She took the last steps so that we could live. They killed my mother." S-Abuse Victim Support Group, Victimas Unidas, who worked with the 38-year-old, said, "We announce with regret her death in Barcelona where she was living." Okay, apparently she committed the S-word, left a farewell note explaining the reasons why she took her own life, and before her death she was quoted as saying, "Hundreds of girls were enslaved over years, lived in farms in Goya, served as wombs to get pregnant for their babies to be sold, and the girls were murdered 10 years after giving birth. We've got a number of testimonies." And Miss Bittencourt received reports of children being sold between £15,000 and £40,000 in Europe, Australia, and the United States. And that's him in his mugshot after he got caught, and he denied all the charges against him. What's crazy, this faith healer, his work caught the attention of Oprah Winfrey. Now, she's definitely not squeaky clean. If you see the Patrick CC video about Oprah recently, that was pretty damning, okay? She popped up at the grounds of the clinic in 2010, giving him a little whitewash of his image. Very, very despicable stuff. That's him arriving to a police station, okay? It's crazy. Hundreds around the world have accused him of abusing them during healing sessions. He became a wanted man after 10 women accused him of abuse. And after the initial interview on TV, authorities were contacted by more than 600 other accusers. Okay, he was arrested, remanded in custody before being charged with the R word and the SA. And basically, he denied all of the charges against him. He started doing psychic surgeries where he said he could cure diseases like cancer. If anyone tells you they can cure cancer, you need to run 100 miles an hour in the opposite direction, okay? And funnily enough, what do you know? Former US President Bill Clinton and supermodel Naomi Campbell are among those rumored to have visited him. Those are a couple of names that have come up in recent videos regarding Jeffrey Epstein. So, in a released email quoting the article after her death, it was alleged that something similar was actually going on at the Zorro Ranch. Black market babies. Okay, this is another leaked email. This is basically said an external email. Woman who accused John of God cult leader of R-word mysteriously kills herself at Spanish home, and basically says blank spoke of this going on at Zorro Ranch. She has said on record that Epstein offered her money to do this, birth babies for black market use. Thank you for investigating this. So apparently this was known, right? And they're linking to the woman, says they were definitely breeding for horrible purposes. I hate how they're not redacting the right things. Every redaction that protects a bad guy should be added to the list of charges for a day of reckoning. You might, what year is it? 2016, 2028. You might get a little reckoning in 2028. It's possible. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, once again, the YouTuber Coop conducted a very deep dive into the accounts of victims held at Zorro Ranch, including allegations of egg harvesting and that there were many more women that were seemingly kept there. So let's check out some clips from this and you'll see what I mean.
But it would be a convenient answer to a couple of those events we spoke about previously. Now, I almost didn't include this in the video because I didn't know where to put it, but I thought this might be a good place. And I didn't really connect it until right now. Several victims of Epstein's, including one video interview I found, claim that while they were there, they were drugged and taken while sleeping into rooms that they had never seen before. They were completely sterile and had medical equipment everywhere. And it seemed that by the time they woke up, whatever had happened was over, but they do recall that their legs were open and there were medical instruments everywhere. And the reason this is worth noting in this chapter is not just the medical elements that we're discussing, but also because these women claim that their eggs might have been stolen by Epstein, which, taking that account into context with Epstein's obsession with building a baby farm at this ranch, it's kind of horrifying to think about. And I think there's a little more reality to that claim than anyone might realize. A couple weeks ago, I was researching into this very topic, and she had an intriguing question, and her line of thought is as follows. We know Epstein is guilty of sin, and we know all sorts of girls were raped, abused, and all sorts of other things in the process. Hundreds and possibly even thousands of them to be more accurate. But not all of these girls have come forward, and many of them were never named or known by those who have come forward. For instance, in one testimony I read, a victim reported that while at the ranch, there were more people than she could count, and among them were dozens of these naked little girls, and she not only knew none of them personally, but hadn't even met them. And these girls just seemingly disappeared afterwards. So then where did they all go? Because it wasn't back home. Or more specifically, where did all the bodies go that didn't make it? After all, the body of an 11-year-old girl isn't built for the abuse of a dozen men, and I thought, wow, my mom's right about something. Where are all the bodies? My first guess is that he might have incinerated them, which, taking on the perspective of a monster, would be the most efficient way to deal with such.
Well, so look, the rumor has it, all right, the rumor has it that maybe there were bodies buried on that Zorro ranch. And what's interesting, okay, these corroborations that these allegations have apparently been corroborated by emails that were released that he was perhaps having these women when they were waking up in the night with all these medical instruments around them, that he was actually extracting and freezing their eggs. Now, this is crazy. It says there's several programs that do this. Melanie is out until Wednesday. She has the list. I work with all the hospitals. Questions the women asked. It said, also, are you the person these girls should go to freeze eggs or rosin wax? Which hospital are you associated with? What group? It says, I'm not the person that freezes eggs. I'm with New York Hospital, but all IVF centers freeze. Crazy. Okay. So apparently he might have had this egg freezing operation going on. And what's even more crazy, back to that little documentary, apparently in 2009, police discovered a burial site in nearby West Mesa that contained the remains of 11 women and an unborn child who disappeared in 2001 and 2005. And some people think maybe this has something to do with what was going on at the old Zorro Ranch.
Commented about something known as the West Mesa murders. On February 2nd of 2009, a woman and her husband were walking along the mesa, which was less than a mile from their home. During which time, as they strolled along, their dog began tweaking. Not just barking and digging like dogs sometimes do, but ferociously attacking the ground. Confused, the owners approached to get him to stop so they could continue their walk, but before they could, the dog had begun digging up a bone. The owner, familiar with animals, and her husband knowledgeable about what to expect out in the desert, knew this wasn't the remains of an animal, it was most certainly a human bone. So they called the police, showed them the bone, and the authorities got to digging. And that day they found the first body, then another the following. Shocked, they hopped onto satellite view and could see a bunch of disturbed plots of dirt next to each other in that same area. So they continued digging and uncovered the horrifying fact that between 2001 and 2005, 12 bodies were buried in the Arroyo Plain in the West Mesa of Albuquerque, New Mexico. There were 11 female bodies of varying ages and one baby skeleton still in the womb. Using satellite view, the police could see when the man had come and gone over the years. They scrolled back and saw the first hole appear in 2001, the last in 2005, and across the area were a whole bunch of tire tracks that kept coming and going. However, the man himself would never be in view, meaning for nearly 5 years, this sick animal had returned to add to his collection. But unlike other killers, he never intended his victims to be found. In fact, he seemingly had everything laid out to the T. The burial site was about a half mile from the end of a suburb being built. Each year, more and more homes were added, until in 2005, the same year he stopped burying the bodies in that location, the developers had begun padding the ground over the bodies for building. And that should have been it. The plans continued to grow from there, with developers anticipating building thousands of new homes on top, eventually covering up and extending well beyond the burial site, which would ensure that no one would ever find the bodies. Except things didn't quite work out that way. In 2008, when the developers were mere feet away from covering the bodies permanently, the housing bubble burst and development halted. During this time, the neighborhood began petitioning for a retention wall to be built to prevent flooding, and because of that, the channel that the water now went through slowly exposed the bones over time, until all it took was one determined dog to reveal them. And yet, despite nearly 2 decades of investigation since, a killer known as the Bone Collector has never been uncovered. Meaning, yes, he is likely still out and about. My heart truly does go out to these victims and
So the killer known as the Bone Collector, they never found out who was responsible. And as of today, 2026, the case still remains unsolved, and the police have identified an additional 8 individuals who went missing under similar circumstances during the same period. So that could be as many as 18, 19 people that went missing as a result of this.
So when the bones were found in 2009, yes, it was a shock to our community and to the police department.
Liz Thompson is a retired APD homicide sergeant who worked this case for nearly a decade, along with Ida Lopez.
We have persons of interest that we're looking into, and we continue. So I just don't want it to be out there where we're losing tips because people assume that we've got this number one suspect, and we're not there yet.
And clues are far and few in between.
What it doesn't have is a lot of physical evidence. These women's remains were bones. There was no clothing, there was no jewelry, there wasn't physical evidence.
Police say there are 8 women still missing from 2003 to 2006. According to investigators, their cases share similar circumstances as the West Mesa victims.
It's extremely gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching that so many families don't have answers, including that there are still women that were on the list of missing women who haven't been found. And that's extremely important, that there may be additional burial sites.
APD also said in the last 2 weeks, they served a new search warrant regarding the case, but didn't go into the specifics about that warrant.
So could Jeffrey Epstein actually be the person responsible for this? It does track. It sounds like he was talking about all these plans to inseminate women from 2001. That's when these murders started happening. It does actually line up. Now, we don't know for sure. This is still unsolved, but it is very suspicious. And the fact that his Zorro Ranch was in the area, there's talk of all these weird things that have gone on behind the scenes. There's other people. Tom Ford's ranch was in the area. He sold his ranch conveniently. Shit started going left. It's actually crazy, okay? So I'm going to do one more video on Jeffrey Epstein, and then I'm going to move on, because it's actually affecting me mentally at this point. I do want to dig into these things. As I've said to you guys before, like, part of the purpose of this channel, there's things that I'm interested in that I want to dig into. I want to learn with it along with you guys. I want to make videos about it and broadcast what I'm learning about in real time. But also, this stuff is just getting so dark. I'm going to do one more video. I'm going to expose Prince Andrew, that piece of dirt. I actually met him one time, and I'll tell you about that in the video, okay? It's messed up. It's actually messed up. So stay tuned. Another video coming for you guys, and then I'm going to give it a break. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this breakdown interesting. Rest in peace to all of the victims. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.